Hey guys, Ben here with Oddly Armed, and today I have another disassembly video for you, this time of a Beretta ARX-100. So let's go ahead, jump into it, and see how this really weird Italian rifle works. Alright, so let's go ahead and get things started by popping out the magazine here, and then our first step to disassembling the Beretta ARX is actually going to be folding the stock. So we'll go ahead and hit that button there on the side so we can fold it over to the right side. I'm going to go ahead and lock it in there. Just give us a little bit more room to play with. And then at the back of the receiver in here, you can see there's a plate. Now what we need to do is lift up on the safety selector so you can see it goes up just slightly, and then we're going to press in on the back on that plate, which will then move forward. And then the awkward part is we need to pull down on the grip, and then eventually it's actually going to go ahead and pop straight off there. So it'll come out the back, and then you can just pull it straight off. And then looking at our grip assembly, there's not a ton to see here, so you can see our safety selector as well as our bolt catch, bolt release, and then this button on the bottom which can act as a bolt catch or as a magazine release if you needed to. And then on the top here you can see this is our bolt hold open, and then the trigger group on the inside there, so you can see this is not compatible with an AR-15 whatsoever. It's a proprietary trigger group. And it's a lot of polymer in there too, so that kind of contributes to the not so great trigger feel on this rifle. And then we do have our ambi safety selector on there. And then also the grip, if you take a cartridge case, you can see there's this little bit here at the bottom. We press in on that, and it's a little bit awkward on these. Pretty much everything on the ARX is awkward to some degree. But that'll go ahead and pop out this little grip panel at the bottom, so you can use this as a storage compartment. And it's very easy, just slide that straight back in there, press in on it, and it'll pop back into place. We're going to talk a little bit more about this plate in the back in a little bit once we get the bolt out, but this is how you swap it from left to right eject. And speaking of the bolt, that's the next thing we're going to remove from the rifle. So we'll go ahead, grab our charging handle. We're going to pull it back to the disassembly notch here, so you can see that right there in the receiver, at which point you can pull straight out on it. And you want to go ahead and flip the charging handle here all the way to the front. Sometimes you got to get the bolt in the right position there, but once you flip it to the front, then you can go ahead and pull the entire bolt assembly out the rear of the rifle. And now that we have the bolt carrier group and the spring assembly out of the rifle, we can actually go ahead and remove the spring assembly. So you just have to press inwards and then rotate it a little bit until that lines up in the front, at which point you can go ahead and slide it rearwards outside of there. These plastic panels right here actually just cover up the slot that the charging handle rides in the receiver, so it doesn't get a bunch of dirt in there. And we can go ahead and set this aside. And then coming back to our bolt carrier group here, next step is going to be flipping our charging handle to either side. If you try and remove the bolt with the charging handle to the front, there's a little lug in there which holds it in. So we'll need to flip that around, and this also shows you exactly how that goes with the charging handle flipping to either side. Doesn't matter which side it's on, but then you just pull the bolt back and you have to rotate it a little bit through the cam track, and it'll come straight out the back. So there you can see the cam track on the inside of the bolt carrier, and there's really not too much else to see on the bolt carrier itself. And next up, I just want to demonstrate how the swappable ejection works on the ARX-100. So if you look at the front of the bolt, we have our ejectors, which are also our extractors. So you can see on both sides of the rifle here, if I get that back in its track there, and sometimes it's a little bit awkward. There we go, popped it back in. Those are our extractors and our ejectors, so it acts as both. And at the back of the receiver here, you can see there's a little silver plate in there, and that determines which side is going to be the extractor and which side is going to be the ejector. So as the bolt is traveling in its rearward motion, the side that the side of the metal that it hits back in here is the one that determines which one is going to be the ejector. So you can see there it hits that at the end of its travel a little bit before, so it's going to press forward on the left side there, and that's going to be the one that acts as the ejector in this situation. And then when you go ahead and swap it to the other side, when you're pressing through the receiver with a bullet, what you're actually pressing on is this plate. So when we hit it with a bullet, it's going to slide that plate over. So now it's solid on the other side. So if we go ahead and press our bolt in there once again, we'll see the other side is now being pressed forward as the ejector. So that's how it swaps between left and right eject on the ARX. Now to get our firing pin out of the bolt, the first thing we need to do is take this cam pin out. So what we do is we need to go ahead and take a bullet tip and press in on the firing pin, which will allow us to pull out that cam pin. So you can see that there, and then it's got a little cutout in the bottom that rides over the firing pin, at which point we can go ahead and pull the firing pin and its spring outside the rear of the bolt carrier group. So you can see that there, nothing too crazy. And we can actually remove the extractor ejectors out of here as well. So we're gonna go ahead and press forward, and then there's gonna be a little notch here. You can kind of see right there, and it sometimes shoots out like that. And that is our extractor or ejector, depending on what side that plate's on. And then we'll go ahead and do the same thing with the other side here. So again, we just press forward, and then when it gets to that notch there, we'll go ahead and lift up, and there's the other side. And this is your bolt fully disassembled here. And I don't normally show reassembly on here, but it's very tricky with these extractors if you haven't done it before. So to get these back in, what you need to do is go ahead and line up the front of the spring with kind of the back of the channel here that you can see, at which point you can go ahead and start compressing that spring. It's a little bit tricky, but eventually if you kept pressing forward on that, this front part will pop into that channel there. And if you give it a little bit of love, it'll go ahead and slide right back into place. And the final step of disassembly is going to be the barrel removal, which is incredibly Glock-like of all things. So you're going to see these two levers here on either side of the receiver. What you need to do is go ahead and pull it down on those, at which point you can pull the barrel just straight out the front of the rifle here. And go ahead, you can see I'll go ahead and slide out. Usually takes a little bit. You gotta get the piston in the right spot, and then the barrel will slide straight out of the receiver. And looking at the barrel, you can see our piston here on top. It has a ton of movement, which kind of contributes to the recoil pattern of this rifle, having a very kind of long, drawn-out pulse to it. And then piston on the inside there. This also has an adjustable gas system, but it only has a normal and an adverse mode. To adjust that, you basically use a bullet tip or something like this wrench here, and you go ahead and rotate that, and that would be the adverse. And then if it's not all carboned up, then you can bring it back into the normal mode there. And that's basically all there is to see with the barrel. Very good quality barrel with a chrome line bore, and that's really it for that. If you want to go one more step, we can go ahead and remove the Picatinny rail off the bottom of the receiver here. This is not necessary in a normal field stripping, but there's one captive pin here at the back of that rail, so we'll go ahead and press in on that and pull it across, at which point this rail will pop off the front of the receiver here. Very simple part. These are incredibly difficult to find now, though, since Beretta's not really selling them anymore. And then underneath that rail, originally this comes with a panel which basically ergonomically fits the front here, not with that rail, but this covers up the mounting point for Beretta's grenade launcher, which attaches here to the bottom of the receiver. And real quick, I just want to show you the inside of the receiver here. As you can see, there's quite a bit of room, so you can get in there and clean, but it's pretty much all polymer in here. Not really seeing any steel components for the parts to write on, but so far it's held up really well for me over several thousand rounds at least. But it is very good quality polymer that I'm not really worried about breaking at all.